Many of the chains that hold people back are not made of iron or steel, yet they are just as heavy. They are invisible, quietly shaping decisions, limiting courage, and draining hope without being seen. These chains are often formed through fear that settles into the heart after disappointment, through doubt that grows when prayers seem unanswered, and through pain that was never given a chance to heal. Over time, these unseen restraints become familiar, and what once felt temporary begins to feel permanent. Some of these chains were created in moments of deep hurt, a failure that embarrassed you, a rejection that made you question your worth, a season when you tried your best and still fell short. Those experiences leave marks, and if they are not confronted, they begin to speak. They whisper lies that sound like truth, telling you that you are not capable, not chosen, not strong enough. Without realizing it, you start living according to those lies, adjusting your dreams downward and shrinking your expectations just to avoid being hurt again. Other chains are formed by words spoken over you, especially in moments when you were vulnerable. A careless comment from someone you trusted, a harsh judgment spoken in anger, a label placed on you that never belonged to you in the first place. Words have power, and when negative words are repeated long enough, they begin to feel like identity. You stop seeing yourself as who you are becoming and start seeing yourself as who someone else said you were. There are also chains born out of comparison. Watching others move ahead while you feel stuck can slowly convince you that something is wrong with you. You measure your progress against someone else's timeline and forget that every journey is different. This kind of thinking quietly robs joy and replaces gratitude with frustration. Instead of celebrating what you have survived, you focus on what you think you lack, and comparison tightens its grip. Fear is one of the strongest invisible chains. Fear of failing again, fear of being judged, fear of stepping forward and discovering that the outcome is uncertain. Fear convinces you to stay where you are, even when where you are is uncomfortable. It tells you that staying bound is safer than risking freedom. Over time, fear trains the heart to expect loss instead of possibility. What makes these chains so dangerous is that they often go unrecognized. Because they are unseen, they are rarely challenged. People learn to function while bound, to smile while hurting, to keep moving while carrying weight they were never meant to carry. But just because a chain is familiar does not mean it is meant to remain. Awareness is the first step toward freedom. The moment you recognize that what is holding you back is not your destiny, but a life formed through pain, fear, or misplaced words, the chain begins to lose its power. No chain, no matter how strong it feels, has greater authority than the power of God at work in your life. What makes many struggles seem unbreakable is not their strength, but the time they have been present. When something has followed you for years, it begins to feel permanent. You start believing that this is just the way things are and always will be. But time does not give chains permission to rule over your future. What existed yesterday does not automatically qualify to control today. There are moments in life when yesterday tries to introduce itself into a new day. Old regrets attempt to replay in your mind. Past failures rise up and demand attention. Previous mistakes try to label you and define your direction. But a new day carries new mercy, and with new mercy comes new authority. The weight you carried before does not have the right to sit on your shoulders again unless you allow it. Freedom often begins when you decide that yesterday's story will no longer write today's chapter. Many people remain bound not because the chain is unbreakable, but because they believe it has a right to stay. They accept guilt as punishment, pain as destiny, and limitation as identity. But authority does not belong to fear, shame, or past errors. Authority belongs to the one who gives life, restores hope, and renews strength. When you align your heart with that truth, the chain loses its legal ground. It can no longer claim ownership over your thoughts, your joy, or your future. What held you yesterday may have been real, but it is not final. Circumstances change when perspective shifts. The moment you realize that you are not powerless, something inside you begins to rise. Faith does not deny the existence of struggle, it denies its right to dominate. You can acknowledge the pain without surrendering to it. You can remember the past without being trapped by it. Healing begins when you stop giving authority to what hurt you. Each new morning is an invitation to reset your focus. It is a reminder that you are not waking up under the same conditions as before. Strength is renewed, hope is refreshed, grace is extended again. The chain that felt heavy last night does not carry the same power when you stand up in faith today. What once spoke loudly begins to fade when truth takes its place. Freedom is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it begins quietly with a decision to believe differently, to speak differently, and to move differently. When you choose to walk forward instead of reliving what is behind you, you reclaim authority over your life. And when authority is restored, chains that once seemed permanent begin to loosen, weaken, and eventually fall away. Morning prayer is often misunderstood as a desperate plea, as if strength must be borrowed and hope must be begged for. But true prayer at the start of the day is not about weakness, it is about alignment. It is the moment when the heart comes into agreement with truth before the world has a chance to shape your thoughts. In that quiet space, prayer becomes a declaration that your day will not be ruled by fear, confusion, or pressure, but by purpose and faith. When you pray in the morning, you are not trying to convince God to act. You are positioning yourself to receive direction, clarity, and strength. Prayer shifts the atmosphere within you before you step into the atmosphere around you. Instead of reacting to circumstances, you begin the day rooted in confidence. Your words set boundaries for what will and will not have access to your mind and spirit. You are declaring peace over chaos, focus over distraction, and courage over uncertainty. Declarations made in prayer carry power because they shape belief. What you consistently speak, you eventually begin to believe. And what you believe determines how you act. When you declare that you will walk in wisdom today, you become more aware of the choices you make. When you declare that fear will not control you, you begin to recognize when fear tries to enter. Prayer trains the mind to respond with faith instead of panic, with trust instead of doubt. Morning prayer also restores a sense of authority that life often tries to steal. Stress, pressure, and responsibility can make you feel small, as if you are constantly reacting instead of leading. But prayer reminds you that you are not facing the day alone. It centers you in a higher perspective where problems are seen in the light of possibility rather than limitation. In that place, confidence is not based on how strong you feel, but on what you know to be true. This kind of prayer is intentional. It is not rushed or careless. It is spoken with awareness and expectation. Each word becomes a seed planted at the beginning of the day, shaping what will grow as the hours unfold. Even when challenge arises, those declarations remain active, guiding your responses and steadying your emotions. You may not control every situation, but prayer gives you control over how you enter them. As the habit of morning prayer grows, so does spiritual clarity. You become more sensitive to direction, more patient in pressure, and more grounded in purpose. Over time, the difference becomes visible. You carry yourself differently, you speak differently, you move through the day with a quiet assurance that you are not merely surviving, but walking with intention and strength. Chains begin to break the moment faith starts to rise within a person. Faith is not simply believing that things will improve someday. It is the inner awakening that reminds you of who you truly are and what you were created to carry. When faith is dormant, fear speaks loudly and limitations feel permanent. But when faith is activated, it shifts the inner narrative. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and begin to recognize that you were designed with purpose, strength, and resilience. Many people struggle not because they lack ability, but because they have forgotten their identity. Life has a way of stripping confidence through repeated challenges, unanswered questions, and delayed outcomes. Over time, you may begin to see yourself through the lens of failure, disappointment, or survival. Faith interrupts that distorted view. It reminds you that you are not defined by what went wrong, but by what is still possible. The moment you remember who you belong to and why you are here, the chain of self-doubt begins to loosen. Identity is powerful because it shapes behavior. When you believe you are weak, you act cautiously. When you believe you are limited, you stop trying. But when faith restores your sense of identity, your posture changes. You stand differently, you speak with conviction, you begin to make decisions that align with growth instead of fear. This internal shift weakens the chains that once dictated your choices. What once controlled you now has to answer to a renewed sense of purpose. Faith also brings clarity. It helps you separate truth from the lies that have settled into your thinking. Lies tell you that you are stuck, forgotten, or too late. Faith tells you that progress is still possible, that your story is still being written, and that growth does not have an expiration date. As faith grows, these lies lose credibility. They no longer have the authority they once carried because they are no longer believed. Remembering your identity does not mean ignoring your struggles. It means viewing them through a different lens. Challenges become lessons instead of labels. Setbacks become preparation instead of punishment. Faith reframes the past, not to erase it, but to redeem it. What once felt like wasted time begins to make sense as part of a larger process. This understanding brings freedom because it removes shame and replaces it with meaning. As faith continues to rise, courage follows. You become willing to take steps you once avoided. You try again where you once quit. You speak up where you once stayed silent. Each step taken in faith weakens the chains further. Freedom is rarely instant, but it is progressive. With every reminder of who you are and every decision rooted in faith, the hold of limitation fades and the path forward becomes clearer and lighter. Change does not always announce itself through immediate outward results. Often, the most powerful transformation begins quietly, deep within the heart and mind, long before circumstances reflect it. Many people become discouraged because they expect instant change in their surroundings, and when that does not happen, they assume nothing is working. But inner transformation is the foundation upon which lasting external change is built. The moment faith is activated, something begins to shift internally, even if nothing looks different on the surface yet. This inner shift starts with perspective. Instead of viewing situations through frustration and hopelessness, you begin to see them through patience and trust. Your reactions soften. Your thoughts become more intentional. Where anxiety once dominated, calm starts to take its place. This does not mean challenges disappear, but they no longer carry the same emotional weight. You are still facing the same reality, but you are no longer facing it the same way. As inner transformation continues, the voice inside you changes. Negative self-talk that once felt automatic begins to lose strength. You become more aware of what you are thinking and more careful about what you believe. Faith teaches you to challenge destructive thoughts instead of accepting them as truth. Over time, this mental renewal creates emotional stability. You are less reactive, less overwhelmed, and more grounded, even in uncertain situations. Inner change also influences how you respond to people. When faith is active within you, patience increases and resentment decreases. You become less defensive and more understanding. You are no longer driven by the need to prove yourself or protect your ego. This shift in attitude can improve relationships and open doors that were previously closed by tension or misunderstanding. Others may not immediately recognize what has changed, but they will feel the difference in how you carry yourself. Another sign of inner transformation is renewed hope. Hope does not deny difficulty, it expects progress. It allows you to keep moving forward even when results are delayed. This kind of hope is steady, not emotional. It anchors you during uncertainty and keeps you from giving up prematurely. Even when circumstances remain unchanged, hope reminds you that growth is happening beneath the surface, preparing you for what comes next. Inner transformation also strengthens endurance. Instead of quitting when progress feels slow, you develop the ability to remain consistent. You understand that lasting change is a process, not an event. This patience protects you from frustration and burnout. You learn to trust timing rather than forcing outcomes. Eventually, what has been shifting inside begins to influence the outside. Decisions improve, confidence grows. Opportunities align with the new mindset you have developed. What started as a quiet internal change becomes visible through actions and outcomes. But it all begins with the moment faith is activated within, setting a transformation in motion that circumstances cannot stop. Freedom is not something that happens by accident. It is experienced through trust, movement, and obedience. Many people desire change, yet remain in the same place because they are waiting for perfect conditions. But freedom often begins when you choose to trust even when clarity is incomplete. Trust shifts your focus from what you cannot control to what you can. Your response, your attitude, and your willingness to move forward. When trust is activated, fear loses its grip and hesitation begins to weaken. Walking forward requires courage because it involves leaving what is familiar. Even unhealthy situations can feel safe simply because they are known. Chains often remain unbroken not because they are strong, but because they are familiar. Trusting God means believing that what lies ahead, though unseen, holds more promise than what you are leaving behind. Each step taken in trust reinforces confidence, reminding you that you are supported even when the path is uncertain. Obedience is closely connected to freedom because it aligns your actions with purpose. Obedience is not about restriction. It is about direction. It keeps you moving toward growth rather than comfort. Sometimes obedience requires letting go of habits, relationships, or mindsets that no longer serve you. These moments can feel uncomfortable, but they are often the turning points where chains finally fall away. What you release creates space for what is meant to come next. Believing that today is appointed for breakthrough changes how you approach the present moment. Instead of postponing hope to some distant future, you begin to expect progress now. This belief does not mean every problem disappears instantly, but it fuels perseverance. You wake up with intention, aware that each day carries purpose and opportunity. This mindset transforms ordinary moments into meaningful steps forward. As trust, obedience, and expectation work together, momentum builds. You become less focused on past failures and more attentive to present opportunities. Your decisions become bolder, your prayers more confident, and your actions more aligned with growth. Freedom unfolds gradually, often through a series of small, faithful choices rather than one dramatic moment. This process reshapes how you view challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as signs to stop, you begin to see them as invitations to grow stronger. Each challenge becomes a chance to practice trust and obedience again. Over time, these repeated choices form a pattern of freedom. What once felt impossible becomes manageable. What once felt heavy becomes lighter. As you continue to walk forward with trust and obedience, the belief that breakthrough is possible today turns into lived experience, and freedom becomes not just a hope,